Have you ever heard crying late at night? A sound so eerie that it sends chills down your spine? What would you do if you did? Would you investigate? Or would you stay safe in the comfort of your bed, pretending not to hear it? This is the kind of question that haunts those who've experienced something unexplainable. And tonight, I'm going to share a story that might make you think twice about answering the cries in the dark. It all started on a cold, rainy night. Lily, a young woman in her mid-20s, had just moved into a quaint little house on the outskirts of a small town. The house was charming, with a wraparound porch and large windows that looked out onto the forest. But there was something unsettling about it too, something Lily couldn't quite put her finger on. Maybe it was the way the shadows seemed to linger a little too long, or how the air inside felt just a bit colder than it should. Lily had brushed off her unease as first-night jitters. After all, moving to a new place could be overwhelming. She spent the evening unpacking, arranging furniture, and playing music to keep herself company. By the time she was ready for bed, the rain had picked up, its steady drumming on the roof creating a soothing rhythm. Wrapping herself in a warm blanket, Lily drifted off to sleep, unaware of what the night had in store for her. Around midnight, she woke up suddenly. At first, she wasn't sure what had stirred her. The rain had softened to a light drizzle, and the house was silent except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. Then she heard it, a faint, muffled crying. It sounded like a child coming from somewhere outside. Lily sat up in bed, her heart racing. Who would be outside in the middle of the night, especially in this weather? She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, or maybe an animal, but the sound persisted. The crying was soft, almost pleading, and it tugged at something deep inside her. Against her better judgment, she got out of bed and went to the window. The forest was cloaked in darkness, the trees swaying gently in the wind. Lily squinted, trying to make out the source of the sound, but she saw nothing unusual. Just as she was about to turn away, the crying grew louder, clearer. It was definitely a child's voice, and it seemed to be coming from the edge of the woods. What would you have done in her place? Would you have gone outside to help? Or would you have stayed inside, safe but plagued by guilt? Lily didn't hesitate for long. She grabbed a flashlight in her coat, telling herself she couldn't just ignore a child in need. But as she stepped outside, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a mistake. The air was damp and chilly, and the ground was slick with mud. Lily shone her flashlight in the direction of the cries, calling out, "Hello? Is someone there? Are you okay?" The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that made her skin crawl. She stood frozen, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the darkness, but revealing nothing. Just as she was about to turn back, the crying started again, this time farther away, deeper into the woods. It was as if the sound was leading her somewhere. Lily's mind screamed at her to go back to the house, to lock the door and pretend none of this was happening. But her feet seemed to move on their own, drawn toward the sound. The forest was dense, the trees looming like silent watchers. Every step Lily took seemed to echo, the crunch of leaves and twigs unnaturally loud. The flashlight flickered, and for a moment, she was plunged into darkness. Panic surged through her, but the light came back just as quickly, illuminating a small clearing ahead. In the center of the clearing stood a figure, small and hunched. It was a child, or at least it looked like one. The figure's back was to her, and it was shaking as if sobbing. "Hey," Lily called softly, trying to sound comforting. "Are you lost? Do you need help?" The figure didn't respond. It just kept crying, the sound hollow and unnatural. Lily took a hesitant step forward, her instincts screaming at her to turn and run. But she couldn't leave the child there. Could she? Then, the crying stopped. The figure straightened slowly, unnaturally. It turned its head, and Lily's heart stopped. The face wasn't that of a child. It was pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. The mouth stretched into an unnatural smile, wide and menacing. Lily stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. Darkness swallowed the clearing, and the only sound was her ragged breathing. She fumbled for the flashlight, her fingers shaking uncontrollably. When she finally managed to turn it back on, the figure was gone. Terrified, Lily ran back to the house as fast as she could, her mind racing with questions. What had she just seen? Was it real? Or was her imagination playing tricks on her? Once inside, she locked every door and window, her heart pounding in her chest. For the rest of the night, Lily sat curled up on the couch, the lights on and a heavy kitchen knife in her hand. She didn't sleep. When dawn finally broke, the crying had stopped, replaced by the sounds of birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. The bright morning light made the events of the night feel distant, almost unreal. But Lily knew it wasn't her imagination. The fear she felt was too real. She decided to ask her neighbors about it. Maybe they'd heard the crying too, or knew something about the strange figure in the woods. When she brought it up, an elderly neighbor's face grew pale. "You heard it, didn't you?" the woman said, her voice trembling. "The crying. You should never answer it. That's how it lures you." Lily's stomach dropped. "What is it?" she asked. The woman shook her head. "Nobody knows for sure. Some say it's a spirit. Others think it's something far worse. But one thing is certain. Anyone who follows the crying doesn't come back the same." Chills ran down Lily's spine. She thanked the neighbor and left, her mind racing. She hadn't told the woman about the figure she'd seen, but it seemed clear now that whatever it wasn't human. That night, Lily stayed up late. The memory of the figure's face burned into her mind. She had no intention of going outside again, no matter what she heard. And sure enough, as the clock struck midnight, the crying began again. This time, Lily ignored it. She turned up the volume on her TV, trying to drown out the sound. But the crying grew louder, more insistent. It was as if it knew she was there, refusing to be ignored. What would you have done in her place? Could you have stayed strong? Or would the crying have broken your resolve? Lily wasn't sure how long she could hold out. The sound was relentless, digging into her mind like claws. Finally, she screamed, "Leave me alone!" The crying stopped instantly. The silence was deafening, almost worse than the sound. Lily sat frozen, her heart pounding, waiting for something to happen. But the night remained still. In the days that followed, the crying didn't return. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of her vision, and the house felt colder than ever. She began to wonder if ignoring the cries had really been the right choice. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of the unexplained, subscribe to my channel. Together, we'll explore the mysteries that lurk in the shadows, the stories that make us question what we know about the world. And remember, if you ever hear crying at midnight,